No Maid survived a day with the Billionaire's triplets, until new Maid arrived and did the unthinkable. The woman lay peacefully on the enormous bed. 3 small boys were curled up around her. All 4 of them were fast asleep. Their breathing was soft and steady. Their faces were calm, peaceful, content. A man in an expensive suit stood in the doorway. His mouth hung open in shock. His eyes were wide with disbelief. His briefcase slipped from his fingers and hit the marble floor with a loud thud. But nobody woke up. They were too deeply asleep, too comfortable, too safe. This was impossible, absolutely impossible, because those 3 boys never slept. They never stopped running. They never stopped screaming. They never ever let anyone get close to them. 47 nannies had quit in the past year. 47. Some lasted a week. Some lasted 3 days. One lasted exactly 45 minutes before she ran out the door crying and never came back. But this woman had done the impossible. She had done the unthinkable. Let me tell you how we got here. Before we dive in, drop your city in the comments. We'd love to know where you're watching from. And don't forget to like and subscribe so you never miss another powerful story like this. Now let's continue. Alexander Hart was one of the richest men in America. He owned hotels across 5 continents. He owned technology companies, real estate empires, investment firms. His name appeared in business magazines every month. His face was on the covers. People called him a genius, a visionary, a man who turned everything he touched into gold. But money couldn't buy what Alexander needed most. His wife, Catherine, had died 3 years ago. She died giving birth to their sons, 3 perfect baby boys, triplets, born 2 months early, tiny and fragile, fighting for every breath. Catherine had fought too. She fought so hard, but complications from the emergency delivery were too severe. She held her babies for exactly 17 minutes. Then she closed her eyes and never opened them again. Alexander held his newborn sons in the hospital that night. 3 tiny babies who would never know their mother. 3 boys who would grow up without her laugh, without her warmth, without her love. The doctors told Alexander the boys would be okay. They were strong. They were fighters. They would survive. But Alexander wasn't sure he would survive. The love of his life was gone, and he was left with 3 babies who needed everything, who needed a mother, who needed what he couldn't give them. Alexander threw himself into work. He hired the best nannies money could buy, the most qualified, the most experienced, women with degrees in child development, women who came with glowing references, women who promised they could handle anything. But they couldn't handle the Hart triplets. Noah, Ethan, and Mason were now 4 years old, and they were tornadoes, hurricanes, forces of nature that destroyed everything in their path. They didn't mean to be bad. They weren't bad boys. They were just wild, uncontrollable, desperate for attention in the only way they knew how. They climbed on everything, the furniture, the curtains, the chandeliers. They broke vases. They spilled paint on Persian rugs worth more than cars. They flushed toys down toilets and flooded bathrooms. They drew on walls with permanent markers. They screamed, all the time, ear-piercing screams that echoed through the mansion. They threw food. They refused to eat. They refused to sleep. They ran away from everyone who tried to help them. And they bit, they hit, they kicked, not because they were mean, but because they were scared, because everyone who came to take care of them always left. Every single person who started to get close would disappear, pack their bags and walk out that door and never come back. So the boys learned not to let anyone get close. They learned to push people away first, before those people could leave them, before those people could hurt them. Nanny after nanny quit. Mrs. Henderson lasted 2 weeks. She quit after Ethan bit her arm so hard she needed a tetanus shot. Miss Phillips lasted 9 days. She quit after all 3 boys locked her in the basement and she couldn't get out for 3 hours. Mrs. Jameson lasted exactly 1 day. She quit after the boys poured an entire gallon of maple syrup in her suitcase. The agency stopped sending people. They said the Hart triplets were impossible, unmanageable, beyond help. Alexander was at his breaking point. He barely slept. He worked 18-hour days. He came home to chaos. broken things, crying children, exhausted temporary staff who begged him to find someone permanent. He didn't know what to do. He loved his sons desperately, but he didn't know how to reach them. Every time he tried to talk to them, they ran away. Every time he tried to hug them, they pushed him away. They were so angry, so hurt, so scared, and Alexander felt like he was failing them. Just like he'd failed their mother. Sarah Mitchell was 32 years old. She worked at a children's behavioral center downtown. She worked with kids who had experienced trauma, kids who had lost parents, kids who were angry at the world, kids who nobody else could reach. Sarah had a gift. She could see past the bad behavior. She could see the pain underneath. She could see the scared little children who just wanted to feel safe. Sarah had 3 younger brothers. She'd helped raise them after their father left when Sarah was 15. She knew what it felt like to grow up without a parent. She knew what it felt like to be angry and scared and alone. But Sarah had a problem. Her mother had early onset Alzheimer's. She was only 58 years old. The disease was progressing fast. She needed full-time care. Care that cost more money than Sarah could make at the behavioral center. Sarah was looking through job listings late one night. Her eyes were blurry from tears. She'd just gotten another medical bill. Another notice that her mother's care facility needed payment, or they'd have to move her to a cheaper place. A place that wasn't as nice. A place that didn't have enough staff. A place where her mother wouldn't get the attention she needed. Then Sarah saw the ad. Nanny needed for 3 4-year-old boys. Live-in position. Competitive salary. The salary listed made Sarah's heart stop. It was 3 times what she made now. Maybe 4 times. With that money, she could keep her mother in the good facility. She could pay off the medical bills. She could breathe again. But there was a note at the bottom of the ad that made her pause. Warning: this position is extremely challenging. Previous candidates have not lasted long. Only apply if you have extensive experience with difficult behaviors. Sarah smiled. Difficult behaviors. That was her specialty. She applied immediately. 2 days later, she was sitting in the most beautiful living room she'd ever seen. Crystal chandeliers, marble floors, windows that stretched from floor to ceiling, with views of gardens that looked like they belonged in magazines. A tired-looking man walked in. Alexander Hart. He wore an expensive suit that fit perfectly. His watch probably cost more than Sarah's car, but his eyes were exhausted, sad, like he carried the weight of the world. Miss Mitchell, he said, barely looking at her. I'll be honest with you. This position is nearly impossible. My sons are difficult, very difficult. I can't keep nannies. They all quit, sometimes within hours. Why do they quit? Sarah asked gently. Alexander looked surprised, like nobody had ever asked that before. Because my sons are out of control, he said flatly. They destroy things. They refuse to listen. They're violent sometimes. They need help that I don't know how to give them. May I ask you something? Sarah said. When was the last time you spent a full day with your sons? Not just an hour in the evening? A full day. Alexander's face flushed. He looked down. I work. I have to work. I have companies to run, people depending on me. Your sons depend on you too, Sarah said softly, not accusingly, just stating a fact. Alexander's jaw clenched. Are you interested in the position or not? I'm very interested, Sarah said, but I need to be honest with you too. I think your sons aren't bad children. I think they're hurting children. They've lost their mother, and from what I can see, they've also lost their father. Not because you died, but because you disappeared into your work. Alexander stood up fast. His chair scraped against the floor. How dare you? I'm not judging you, Sarah interrupted gently. I'm just telling you what I see. You lost your wife. You're grieving. You buried yourself in work to avoid the pain. I understand that. But your sons are grieving too. They're 4 years old and they don't understand why everyone leaves them, why everyone gives up on them. Alexander stared at her. His eyes were wet. His hands were shaking. Can you help them? He whispered. Can anyone help them? Yes, Sarah said firmly, but you have to help them too. I can't do this alone. They need their father. Not eventually. Now. Alexander was quiet for a long moment. Then he nodded. When can you start? Tomorrow. Sarah moved into the mansion the next morning. She had a beautiful room on the second floor. It had a canopy bed and an attached bathroom with a tub big enough to swim in. The closet was bigger than her entire apartment bedroom, but Sarah barely noticed any of it. She was focused on meeting the boys. A stressed-looking woman named Mrs. Chen met her in the kitchen. Mrs. Chen was the housekeeper. She'd been with the family for 20 years, since before the boys were born. Bless you for trying, Mrs. Chen said, shaking her head. But those boys, they're impossible. Nothing works. Timeouts don't work. Rewards don't work. Consequences don't work. They just don't care. Where are they now? Sarah asked. Upstairs in the playroom. Destroying it, probably. Sarah went upstairs. She heard the noise before she reached the playroom. Screaming, crashing, the sound of things breaking. She opened the door. The playroom looked like a war zone. Toys everywhere, books torn and scattered, paint smeared on the walls. 3 little boys in the middle of it all. They were beautiful boys, dark curly hair like their father, big brown eyes, but those eyes were angry, so angry. One boy was throwing blocks at the wall, hard, one by one. Crash, crash, crash. Another boy was ripping pages out of books, tearing them to shreds. The third boy was jumping on an overturned toy box, jumping and screaming at the top of his lungs. They saw Sarah. They stopped. They stared at her. Who are you? One of them demanded. His voice was harsh, challenging. I'm Sarah, she said calmly. She didn't move. She just stood in the doorway. You must be Noah, Ethan, and Mason. I'm very happy to meet you. Go away, another boy screamed. We don't want you here. You're going to leave anyway. They all leave. I'm not going anywhere, Sarah said. She meant it. She said it with such certainty that the boys paused. Yes, you will, the third boy said. His voice was quieter, sadder. Everyone leaves. Everyone always leaves. Sarah's heart broke. She saw it now. The pain under the anger. The fear under the violence. These weren't bad boys. These were terrified boys who'd been abandoned over and over and over again. Sarah sat down, right there in the doorway, on the floor. She didn't try to clean up. She didn't tell them to stop making messes. She just sat. You're right, she said. A lot of people have left. That must hurt so much. That must make you feel like nobody will ever stay. Like maybe there's something wrong with you. The boys stared at her. Nobody had ever said that before. Nobody had ever understood. But there's nothing wrong with you, Sarah continued. You're perfect exactly as you are. You're just scared and angry and sad, and you have every right to feel all those things. One of the boys, Mason, Sarah would learn later, started crying. Not the angry crying that comes with tantrums. Real crying. Deep, painful crying. I miss Mommy, he sobbed. I don't even remember her, but I miss her. Sarah opened her arms. She didn't move toward him. She just opened her arms. An invitation, a choice. Mason ran to her. He threw himself into her arms and sobbed. His little body shook. The other 2 boys watched. Frozen, like they didn't know what to do. It's okay to miss her, Sarah whispered to Mason. It's okay to be sad. It's okay to cry. Then Noah started crying too, then Ethan, and suddenly all 3 boys were in Sarah's arms, crying like they'd been holding it in for years. Maybe they had been. Sarah held them. She didn't try to stop the crying. She didn't tell them to calm down. She just held them and let them feel all the feelings they'd been pushing down for so long. They cried for almost an hour, and when they were done, they were exhausted, drained, but somehow lighter. I'm hungry, Ethan whispered. Then let's get you some food, Sarah said gently. She took them downstairs. She made them grilled cheese sandwiches and tomato soup. Comfort food, simple food, the kind of food that feels like a hug. The boys ate quietly. They kept looking at Sarah, like they were waiting for her to yell, to leave, to give up. But she didn't. She just smiled at them. After lunch, would you like to help me bake cookies? She asked. Cookies? Noah said. His eyes got wide. Chocolate chip cookies. My grandmother's recipe. The best cookies in the world. But I need helpers. Do you know any good helpers?" All three boys raised their hands. For the first time in maybe ever, they looked excited, happy, like regular 4-year-old boys. That first week was hard, really hard. The boys still had tantrums. They still threw things sometimes. They still tested Sarah, constantly. They were waiting for her to give up, to leave like everyone else. But Sarah didn't give up. Every time they misbehaved, she stayed calm. She didn't yell. She didn't punish. She tried to understand. When Ethan threw his plate across the room, Sarah asked gently, "Are you feeling angry right now? Can you tell me why?" When Noah bit Mason during an argument over a toy, Sarah separated them calmly. "I know you're upset, but we don't hurt people. Let's talk about better ways to show we're angry." When Mason screamed that he hated her, Sarah said, "You can be angry with me. That's okay. I'm not going anywhere." Slowly, the boys started to trust her. Sarah created routines, predictable schedules, breakfast at the same time every day, playtime, lunch, quiet time with books, outside time in the gardens, bath time, dinner, story time, bed. The boys had never had routines before. Nannies quit too fast to establish any. But routines made the boys feel safe. They knew what was coming next. They knew what to expect. Sarah also created rules, simple rules, kind rules. We use gentle hands. We use words, not screaming. We clean up our messes together. We always say goodnight. When the boys broke rules, Sarah didn't punish. She redirected. She helped them make better choices. She taught them, and she praised them, constantly, for every tiny good thing. "I love how you shared that toy with your brother. You used such a gentle voice. That was wonderful. Look how you cleaned up those blocks. You're such a good helper." The boys soaked it up like flowers soaking up water. They'd been so starved for positive attention, for love, for someone to notice when they did something right instead of only noticing when they did something wrong. But the hardest part was bedtime. The boys had never had a real bedtime routine. They'd never learned to sleep well. They would fight sleep for hours. They would get out of bed dozens of times. They would cry and scream. Some nights they didn't fall asleep until midnight. Then they'd be exhausted and cranky the next day. Sarah tried everything: warm baths, lavender lotion, calm music, story time. But the boys were still anxious, still scared. What if Sarah wasn't there in the morning? What if she left while they slept? On the 7th night, Sarah had an idea. After stories and songs and prayers, after tucking each boy into his own bed, Sarah did something different. She lay down on the floor between their 3 beds. "What are you doing?" Noah asked, sitting up. "I'm staying right here," Sarah said. "Right here where you can see me. I'm not leaving. I'll be here all night if you need me." "Really?" Ethan whispered. "Really? You promise?" Mason's voice was so small. "I promise. Now close your eyes. I'm right here." The boys lay back down. Sarah started humming softly, a gentle lullaby, the same lullaby her mother used to sing to her. Within 20 minutes, all 3 boys were asleep. Deep sleep, peaceful sleep. For the first time in their lives, they felt safe enough to really rest. Sarah stayed on that floor all night. Her back hurt. The floor was hard, but she didn't care. She did it again the next night, and the next, and the next. After 2 weeks, something amazing happened. The boys didn't need her on the floor anymore. They trusted that she'd be there in the morning. They trusted that she wouldn't leave. But sometimes on hard nights, when they were scared or sick or had bad dreams, Sarah would still lie down on their floor. Or better yet, she'd curl up in the big armchair in their room. Or sometimes she'd bring all 3 boys into her room and let them pile onto her big bed. She'd lie there with all 3 boys curled around her. Their breathing would sync up, slow and steady, and they'd all sleep. Really, truly sleep. The sleep that comes from feeling safe, from feeling loved, from feeling like, finally, someone was going to stay. Alexander noticed the changes immediately. The house was quiet, not empty quiet, peaceful quiet. There was still noise, children playing, laughing, talking, but not screaming, not crashing, not chaos. The first week, Alexander didn't know what to make of it. He came home one evening and found Sarah and the boys in the kitchen. They were making dinner together. All three boys wore little aprons. They had flour on their noses. They were giggling. "Daddy!" Mason shouted when he saw Alexander. "We made bread! Real bread! We kneaded it with our hands!" Alexander stared. Mason had never run up to him like that before. Never looked excited to see him. That's wonderful," Alexander managed to say. "You have to try it at dinner," Ethan added. "Sarah said we did a really good job." Dinner that night was different. The boys sat at the table. They didn't throw food. They didn't scream. They talked. They told Alexander about their day, about the bugs they found in the garden, about the fort they built, about the story Sarah read them. Alexander barely knew how to respond. He'd never had a normal dinner with his sons. He didn't know it was possible. After dinner, Sarah asked to speak with him. "The boys are doing wonderfully," she said. "They just needed consistency, patience, love. They're good boys, Mr. Hart. Really good boys." "I can see that," Alexander said quietly. I didn't know. I didn't know they could be like this." "They can be," Sarah said. "But they still need you. They need their father, not just in the evenings for an hour. They need you present, engaged. They need to know you're not going to disappear." Alexander looked down. Shame washed over him. "I don't know how to do that. I don't know how to be what they need." "Then learn," Sarah said gently. "Start small. Spend Saturday with them. A whole day. No work calls, no emails. Just you and your sons. I don't even know what they like to do." "Then ask them. They'll show you. They want you, Mr. Hart. They desperately want their father." That Saturday, Alexander cleared his schedule. For the first time in years, he had a completely work-free day. He was terrified, but Sarah was there to help. She suggested they go to the zoo. The boys had never been to a zoo. At first, it was awkward. Alexander didn't know what to say. He wasn't used to playing. He wasn't used to slowing down and seeing the world through children's eyes. But then Mason grabbed his hand. "Daddy, look, lions! Can we see the lions?" Alexander looked down at his son's small hand in his. When was the last time he'd held his son's hands? He couldn't remember. "Yes," Alexander said. His voice cracked. "Let's see the lions." That day changed everything. Alexander watched his sons' faces light up at every animal. He heard their questions and their laughter. He felt their hands in his. He carried Noah on his shoulders when the little boy got tired. He helped Ethan read the animal information signs. He listened to Mason's elaborate stories about what the animals were thinking. For the first time since Catherine died, Alexander felt alive. Really alive. He realized he'd been missing everything. While he was building business empires, his sons were growing up. They were becoming little people with personalities and interests and opinions, and he barely knew them. That night, Alexander did something he'd never done before. He gave the boys their bath. Sarah showed him how to make it fun, how to play games with bath toys, how to make silly hairstyles with shampoo bubbles. The boys laughed until their sides hurt. They splashed. They played. They called him Daddy over and over, like they were testing the word, like they were making sure it was real. Then Alexander read bedtime stories. His voice was rusty at first. He wasn't used to reading out loud, but the boys snuggled close, one on each side, one in his lap, their warm little bodies pressed against him, their eyes getting droopy as his voice rose and fell with the story. When they were asleep, Alexander stood in their doorway. He watched his three sons sleeping peacefully, their faces so innocent, so beautiful, so precious. He'd almost missed this. He'd almost let work take everything from him. He'd almost lost his sons the same way he'd lost his wife. But Sarah had saved them. She'd saved his family. Alexander started working less. He started coming home at 5 o'clock instead of 9. He had dinner with his sons every night. He helped with bath time. He read stories. He was there. On weekends, they did family things. Parks, museums, picnics in the garden, movie nights with popcorn. And slowly, Alexander built real relationships with his boys. He learned that Noah loved dinosaurs and could name 20 different species, that Ethan was artistic and could draw surprisingly well for a 4-year-old, that Mason loved music and could sing every Disney song from memory. He learned their favorite foods, their favorite colors, their fears, their dreams, their silly jokes that made no sense but made them laugh anyway. He learned how to comfort them when they were sad, how to celebrate with them when they were happy, how to set boundaries when they misbehaved, how to be a father. 3 months after Sarah arrived, Alexander came home early from a business trip. He'd been gone for 2 days, his longest time away since Sarah started. He'd called every night. The boys had talked his ear off. They'd told him every detail of their days. They'd said they missed him. They'd made him promise to come home soon. He'd missed them too, desperately. It felt like part of him was missing when he was away from them. He came home on a Wednesday afternoon. The house was quiet, peaceful. He walked through the rooms looking for his family. He found Mrs. Chen in the kitchen. "Where are they?" he asked. "Nap time," Mrs. Chen said with a smile. "They wore themselves out playing in the garden this morning. Sarah took them up about an hour ago." Alexander went upstairs. He walked toward the boys' room, but it was empty. Their beds were neatly made. He heard soft breathing from down the hall, from Sarah's room. The door was open slightly. He looked inside, and his heart stopped. There, on Sarah's enormous bed, lay Sarah and all 3 of his sons. They were fast asleep, curled up together, Mason's head on Sarah's shoulder, Ethan tucked under her arm, Noah pressed against her side, all 4 of them breathing slowly, deeply, peacefully. They looked like a family. They looked whole. Afternoon sunlight streamed through the windows. The curtains swayed gently in the breeze. Everything was warm and golden and perfect. Alexander had never seen his sons look so content, so safe, so loved. He stood there watching them, his eyes filled with tears, good tears, grateful tears. This woman had done the impossible. She'd reached his unreachable sons. She'd healed their broken hearts. She'd given them back their childhood. She'd taught them to trust, to love, to feel safe. And she'd given Alexander back his sons, back his life, back his heart. His briefcase slipped from his fingers. It hit the floor with a thud. But nobody woke up. They were too comfortable, too peaceful, too safe in this moment together. Alexander pulled out his phone. He took a picture. He wanted to remember this moment forever, the moment his family was truly whole again. Even though Sarah wasn't part of the family in the official sense, she was family in every way that mattered. He quietly closed the door. Let them sleep. Let them have this peace. An hour later, he heard footsteps on the stairs. Small running footsteps. "Daddy!" 3 voices shouted. 3 little boys came running. They launched themselves at him. He caught all 3 of them. They were a tangle of arms and legs and laughter. "You're home!" Noah shouted. "We missed you so much," Ethan said. "Did you bring us presents?" Mason asked. Alexander laughed. "Yes, I brought presents. But first I need about 100 hugs." The boys squeezed him tight, so tight, like they never wanted to let go. Sarah appeared at the top of the stairs. She was smiling. "Sorry, nap time ran a bit late today." They were exhausted from playing outside. "Don't apologize," Alexander said. He looked at her, really looked at her, this incredible woman who'd changed everything. "Thank you for everything, for my sons, for my family, for giving me back my life." Sarah's eyes got misty. "It was always there, Mr. Hart. You just needed someone to help you find it again." The changes in the Hart household were remarkable. The boys thrived. They attended a wonderful preschool now. They had friends. They played sports. Noah was on a soccer team. Ethan took art classes. Mason started piano lessons. They still had hard days sometimes. They were still 4-year-old boys who got frustrated and tired and cranky. But they'd learned how to express their feelings with words. They'd learned that bad moments didn't mean people would leave. They'd learned they were safe. They were loved. They were home. Alexander was a different man. He still worked. He still ran his companies. But work wasn't his whole life anymore. His sons were his life. His family was his life. He'd even started going to therapy, processing his grief over Catherine, learning to move forward while still honoring her memory, learning to forgive himself for the years he'd lost. And Sarah had become irreplaceable. She wasn't just the nanny anymore. She was family. The boys loved her fiercely. They called her their Sarah. Mine Sarah, they'd say with pride when they introduced her to people. One evening after the boys were asleep, Alexander and Sarah sat in the living room. They'd started doing this, talking after the boys went to bed, sharing the day, becoming friends. Sarah, Alexander said slowly, I need to ask you something. Of course, she said. Why did you stay? That first week was terrible. The boys were awful to you. You could have quit like everyone else. Why didn't you? Sarah thought for a moment. Because I saw myself in them. When my father left, I was so angry. I pushed everyone away. I was terrible to my mother sometimes. But she didn't give up on me. She saw past the anger to the hurt underneath, and that changed everything for me. I wanted to do the same for your sons. You saved them, Alexander said. His voice was thick with emotion. No, Sarah said firmly. You saved them. You were willing to change, willing to show up, willing to do the hard work of being present. That's what saved them. I just helped show you the way. Alexander looked at this woman who'd changed his life, this kind, patient, loving woman who'd given his family everything. I don't want you to be the nanny anymore, he said. Sarah's face fell. What? But I want you to be part of the family, really part of it. The boys love you. He paused, took a breath. I've fallen in love with you, Sarah. I know it's complicated. I know I'm your employer. I know there are 1,000 reasons why this is inappropriate, but I can't help how I feel. You've brought light back into this house, into my heart, and I don't want you to be hired help. I want you to be family. I want you to be more. Sarah's eyes filled with tears, happy tears. I love you too, she whispered. I've loved you for months. I just didn't think. I didn't know if you. Alexander crossed the room. He took her hands in his. Will you stay? Not as an employee, as a partner, as part of this family. Will you help me raise these boys? Will you let me love you the way you deserve to be loved? Yes, Sarah said through tears. Yes, 1,000 times yes. They held each other. Two broken people who'd found healing together, who'd built something beautiful from the ashes of grief and pain. Upstairs, 3 little boys slept peacefully, dreaming of soccer games and art projects and piano songs, dreaming of their daddy who came home every night, dreaming of their Sarah who would never, ever leave them. Finally, the Hart family was complete. Alexander and Sarah stood at the altar. The wedding was small, just close friends and family, and 3 little boys in matching tuxedos who served as ring bearers. The ceremony was held in the garden where the boys had played so many happy hours, where they'd learned to laugh again, where they'd learned to trust again. When the minister asked, "Who gives this woman to be married?" a small voice shouted, "We do!" Noah, Ethan, and Mason stepped forward. They took Sarah's hands. "We love you, Sarah," Noah said seriously. He'd practiced this speech for weeks. You came when everyone else left. You stayed when everyone else quit. You loved us when we were really, really hard to love. You're the best almost mommy in the whole world, Ethan added. Will you please be our real mommy now? Mason asked. Please. The entire crowd was crying. Sarah kneeled down. She pulled all 3 boys into her arms. I would be honored to be your mommy. I've loved you since the moment I met you. All 3 of you. You're my heart. There wasn't a dry eye in the garden. The wedding continued. Alexander and Sarah said their vows. Promises to love each other, to support each other, to build a life together, to raise 3 incredible boys together. When they kissed, the boys cheered. They jumped up and down. Mommy, we have a mommy. At the reception, the boys insisted on giving a speech. They stood on chairs so everyone could see them. Noah held the microphone. Our mommy is the best, he announced proudly. She makes the best cookies, and she always knows when we're sad, and she gives the best hugs, and she never ever leaves us. Not even when we're being terrible. And our daddy is the best too, Ethan added. He plays dinosaurs with us, and he takes us to the park, and he reads us stories every night, and he always comes home. We're the luckiest boys ever, Mason finished, because we have the best family, and we're never going to be alone again. The crowd erupted in applause. People wiped their eyes, reached for tissues. Alexander and Sarah looked at each other, then at their 3 sons, their family, their everything. It had started with chaos, with pain, with brokenness, with 3 little boys who nobody thought could be reached, with a father who'd lost himself in grief, with a woman who'd arrived when no one else would. But it had become something beautiful, something whole, something healed, because sometimes the unthinkable isn't something dramatic. It's not something flashy or impressive. Sometimes the unthinkable is simply this: showing up, staying, loving without conditions, being patient when everything is hard, seeing the hurt underneath the anger, choosing to stay when everyone else runs away. Sarah had done the unthinkable. She'd loved 3 unlovable boys. She'd stayed when staying was nearly impossible. She'd believed in a broken family when no one else did. And that simple, unthinkable choice to love had changed everything. So what do you think? Do you know someone who needs to hear this story? Someone who feels broken? Someone who feels like they'll never find their person? Share this video with them. Leave a comment telling us what touched your heart. And if you haven't already, hit that subscribe button right now. Subscribe to our channel for more powerful, heartfelt stories that will restore your faith in love, family, and second chances. We post new stories every day, stories that will make you cry, make you smile, and remind you that it's never too late for healing. It's never too late for love. Thank you for being here. Thank you for watching. And remember, sometimes the most powerful thing you can do is simply stay.